Welcome to In the Trenches, defending the future of youth tackle football. Here's your host, Jeff Gorin.
Good afternoon, and we're here in another version of In the Trenches. I'm Jeff Gorinch with the Ute Conference, and we're talking a lot about how football makes big impacts on kids, not only in their youth, but on into their adult years. And we've been fortunate enough to have some really great guests, and we've got a new guest this week that you guys are all going to know. Marcus, do you want to introduce him? No, Marcus doesn't want to introduce you, but that's great. We have David Nixon from BYU, played on into the NFL, now a commercial real estate broker, and guess what? He coaches here in the Ute Conference. David, welcome in.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, this is exciting. As you mentioned, very involved with the Ute Conference. This year I'll have two boys playing, and so I've been part of the Ute Conference now for a couple of years, coaching my other little boys. So it's a blast. Excited to be here with you.
So you're on BYU TV. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is for me, when I got done playing professionally, I kind of had this void left in my life where I tell people football is an interesting sport because once you're done with football, it's not like pick up basketball where you can just go, get a team or go get a game together and go play. Football, you're kind of done. And so for me, when I was after the NFL, I wanted to kind of stay in the game a little bit, and BYU approached me and asked me if I wanted to come be an analyst for them on their pre- and post-game show. And so I've been doing that since basically about 2011, 2012.
So when you played at BYU, you played with some pretty talented teams.
Yeah.
You were on a lot of 9-10 win teams.
Yep.
For Bronco Mendenhall.
Yeah, so my freshman year, I was with Gary Croden. I went on a 2-year church mission, came home, and I played 06, 07, 08. And those last 3 years, we went 32-7, won 2 Mountain West Conference championships. And I tell people, hey, listen, I went 500 against the Utes. I went 2-2. I lost in 03, won in 06, 07, and we lost in 08. But a lot of those Utes.
Well, it's been downhill since then.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's why I throw out that disclaimer of my record. But I got a lot of good friends that play at the U and good buddies. But, it was a blast. And those teams were fun. We had some good defenses. We had some explosive offenses. And so it was fun kind of gaining a lot of experience there. And being underneath Bronco Mendenhall, which to this day I still admire him and look out to him a ton.
Now, he's come out of retirement. He's going to New Mexico.
Yeah, and he's taking a couple of my buddies with him. Jan Jorgensen's down there at the D-line coach. He took Nick Howell. He poached him, and a lot of these guys were coaches with him in Virginia or even at BYU prior. And so he's kind of got his guys, and I expect him to turn around that program. I mean, Bronco's unbelievable, and that's what he loves to take on. He loves to take on kind of projects.
Well, he was there with Rocky Long back in the day before he came to BYU.
Oh, yeah.
And so he knows the area. He knows the recruiting path. And you know what? He went to Virginia in really tough circumstances. He's a really good coach. In fact,
great coach.
I'm a Utah guy. And I don't think the BYU people appreciate what he did at BYU while he was their coach, while he was there.
No question.
I do.
Yeah.
Because I watched, and, every year you knew that game was going to be a battle.
Yeah. I tell people the Bronco we saw behind closed doors as a team was kind of a different Bronco Mendenhall that showed himself to the media. But Bronco, he wanted to win. He's one of the most competitive guys I've ever been around, and he demanded excellence, and we tried to give it to him. But he's a great coach. I think he'll have great success down there. Like you say, he's already familiar with it when his time down there as a defensive coordinator, when he coached Brian Urlacher down there at New Mexico. But I think they'll find a way to get some wins there.
He's a good guy. He's good for football.
Yep.
He's good for football. Hey, you brought up you just don't go get a pickup game of football going like you do basketball or even, hey, let's go play softball. Or baseball days are over, but let's go hit the big ball. Tell us, how has football impacted your life?
So I played basketball all throughout high school as well, and growing up, and baseball. I played all sports. But for me, football has always been kind of my passion, and football for me is the ultimate team game. And I say that because basketball, you can get a great player that can go one-on-one, and he can dominate a game, right? Baseball, you can get a pretty solid pitcher, a big hitter that can bring in some runs. Football, if everyone's not on the same page, if you got a couple guys lacking that aren't buying in, then you get exploited pretty quickly. And I tell people all the time, football is an interesting game as well because in no other sport do you have kind of physical reliability on your teammate that you do in football. And I said because, football, if one guy's not doing his job and you're not buying in as a team, then you can get somebody seriously hurt. Somebody get hurt because you didn't block. The left tackle didn't block the rush D in, and all of a sudden the quarterback gets hit, right? And so there's some injury issues that come into play that don't come into play with other sports, frankly. And so that's why I think football is the ultimate team game, is because you have that camaraderie and you have to buy in and you're all striving for that one common goal, which you do in other sports, but just ups it a little bit more, given the fact that it's a physical game. And it requires a lot out of you. And so for me, football is the ultimate team game, and that's why I've got my boys involved, because they love it. And I think it teaches you a lot of life lessons.
You bring up injury. How does your wife feel about the boys playing? Because sometimes moms are not an easy sell.
Yeah. No, she wasn't an easy sell. Still not to this day. She grew up with one little sister. She didn't grow up with a big football household. So for her, it's been a sell. But you know what? She comes to all the games. She sees how much my kids love it. And frankly, as you start out young, scouts and grandmas, they're not really getting injured, right? I mean, if I tell parents all the time that are skeptical, I say, go watch a game, and you'll see the contact, especially the younger kids as they start to get older. The younger ones, the contact's pretty limited. It's pillow fighting.
Yeah, it's more of a wrestle to the ground than it is a big hit that blows you up.
And the thought process there is obviously as they grow up and continue to learn good technique and understand how to absorb hits and deliver hits, that they'll be able to protect themselves. And hopefully all those injuries get more and more limited.
So now you didn't grow up playing tackle football.
Yeah, which is a wild thought. I grew up in Texas. And for some reason, one reason or another, our town did not have tackle football. And so I spent my time kind of refining my abilities in the flag game. But I wish I would have. On our team, we actually had a kid who would travel quite a ways to go play tackle. And I remember 7th grade is when I first started playing tackle. And he came in and he knew what he was doing, and he was able to deliver the wood. He laid the wood on everybody because he had learned the proper technique of how to hit. Fast forward our senior year, he ended up being our kicker, which is kind of comical in a sense. But I wish I would have because I think I could have really benefited from the skills that you learn early on, and obviously the technique you learn early on as well. But fortunately, I guess I'm a good case study in the sense that you can pick it up at any time. There might be a little bit of a learning curve, but eventually you kind of catch on and catch up to the rest of the people.
But if you're willing to jump in, work hard, listen to your coaches. That's so important. And parents, please don't coach, because the game's changed probably from when you played.
Yeah.
And so these coaches are teaching some really valuable lessons to these kids. Not all of them are technique.
Yeah.
So talk about life lessons.
Yeah.
That goes on forever.
For me, that honestly, having my kids involved is, yes, I want them to get the experience of playing ball, but for me, it's the life lessons you learn in football where you've got to respect authority, right? And you have a coach that demands that, and as a kid, you learn how to say yes, sir, and do as they demand. And football is played in a tough time of the year. It's hot outside, right? And so it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot of commitment. And I think that's why, going back to my BYU days, even my high school days, you create this sense of community and this camaraderie with your teammates that's tough to replicate because you're in the trenches. And because football is a physical sport, you've got the blood, sweat, and tears that you don't get in a lot of other sports. And those type of moments is what builds character. And that's what builds you as a young man to where you create those relationships. And I look back at BYU, we talked about our locker room. We call each other the band of brothers. And that's how it is to this day. I still have text threads with former teammates where we talk every day amongst each other about issues, whatever it may be. And that's what these kids are doing now, is you're creating and forming those relationships that they'll lean on for the rest of their lives.
Well, you're coaching with one of your fellow linebackers.
Yeah. Brian Kill. So Brian played here locally at Brighton High School.
I coached against him.
There you go. So good experience. So Brian and I played together at BYU, and then we actually played at the Rams together in the NFL. And to this day, he lives a couple miles away from me there in Draper, and he's a dear friend of mine. And to your point,
I don't know how your coaching staff had a few D1 players on it.
Yeah, we just lack linemen. That's what we need. So anybody that wants to move into Corner Canyon, that you got some offensive defensive linemen, please come. It's a fun squad, and it's fun to coach with other coaches that understand the game as well, and are teaching the kids proper technique too. And I know that we spend a lot of time of making sure that we're doing drills that are going to help them and not hurt them, and make sure that the drills are worthwhile too. I think that's the biggest thing as well for coaches. Is not go out there and do the drills you did 30 years ago, because to your point, they're most likely not applicable anymore. The game has changed so much, and it continues to change year in and year out. It's a different game than when it was 20 years ago, and it's making sure that you adjust to how the game's adjusting, and make sure your drills and everything you're doing at practice is applicable to kind of what's happening with the game itself.
My grandson's going to start playing football this year.
Love it.
And somebody said to me, hey, you coached for a long time. Do you want to go coach? I said, I can't coach. I said, I haven't coached since 2009. The game has changed so much, and I'm looking at it from a 30,000-foot level down. I know the techniques. I know those things. But I'd have to really study the game, because the way we played offense and the way we played defense was different. It was different 5 years ago. And I walk out there and I watch all these guys, and they play pin the tail on the donkey with their play cards. They really have no rhyme or reason as to the plays they're calling. And I go, who am I to second guess? Because it's evolving. It's changing at every level. We watched scout teams in the championship run no-huddle offenses this year. And these kids are amazing, and they can do a lot of things, and they can do it at a very high level. So listen to your coaches.
Well, and I like that point you made. For me, it's interesting. If you looked at our call sheet for our Gremlins team last year, it had 80 plays on it. And when we first started doing all the install, our head coach's office coordinator, Wes Patterson, put it in, and I was shocked. I was thinking, there's no way they can remember all these plays. But fast forward throughout the season, we ran every single one of those plays. And I was shocked by the level of absorption that these kids could take that playbook and really internalize it and run those plays effectively. And I think that's another testament to the game of football. The fact that you're forcing these kids to learn this playbook just only helps them from kind of an intelligence standpoint, and helps them grow as a little kid, right? And I think there's some accountability there as well, where they know that they have to know the plays because their teams depend on them. And so there's, once again, life lessons are intertwined throughout football, every turn you take.
But just showing up.
Showing up.
If you're installing 3 or 4 plays on a given day, and they're not there, they're now behind.
Yeah.
Not only on a repetition basis, but just knowledge. And sometimes parents don't realize, you mentioned it, it's hot.
Yeah.
We start on July 25th. It's hot. Inside those helmets, I don't know what the temperature gets to, but it's hot. And we preach, get the kids water, get them out of those helmets. But they're battling a lot of things they've never had to battle. They're learning an offense. They're learning a defense. They're being taught how to block, how to tackle, how to hand the football off. Just as simple as that. And yet they're uncomfortable in their environment.
Well, I think that's the key word, is uncomfortable. And I look back at my days with Bronco, look back at my days in the NFL with the coaches. It's all about making you uncomfortable, right? If we look back at all of our life experiences, I think some of the most growth happens with individuals when you were in uncomfortable situations, right? And those are the biggest life lessons you learned. And I think is helping these kids along through those uncomfortable situations. You don't want them to be uncomfortable all the time, but helping them kind of grow and progress is the key, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a game. The game of football is just a game. The real purpose behind football is to teach these type of life lessons and provide these kids with some type of common goal, which is to go out there and compete. You take that competition, that spirit of competition throughout the rest of your lives, and you translate it into a family of making sure you're competing every day to raise a great family, and work itself, going out there competing every day to earn a living for your family. And so there's so many things you learn in football that you take on with the rest of your life to kind of form what your future family will be one day.
Well, football is the gateway to life in my world. It teaches so many lessons that you've just talked about, but it's the gateway to life. It's one of the situations in our world it's changed a lot. If we had a difference of opinion, we'd go out behind the school and take care of it. You can't do that anymore. But you get knocked to your butt. Now you gotta make a decision. Am I going to get up, or am I going to walk away? Or that hurt. And then you also learn when you're hurt and when you're injured.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because sometimes in life, at my age, I have to fight through pain to get my job done.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's another lesson that's taught on the field that you can't get anywhere else.
100%. And like I said, it takes a whole different level in the game of football than it does in any other sport, whether it's baseball, basketball, or soccer, or whatever it may be. I think football just heightens it a little bit more, given the fact that it is a more aggressive sport. And so I think the margin of error of whether you're hurt or injured comes into play. And kids have to figure out what their limits are. And that's what your job as a coach is, to help them push through those limits of what they think their ceiling is and push through that. And the second they do, they realize, wow, I've got so much more left in the tank, or I've got so much more ability that I can tap into. And it's fun to see that happen throughout the season with kids that came in that didn't have confidence and lacked in that area. And all of a sudden in the season that, we watch the film, go back and watch the film, the kid made a great play. And you see him leave the film session kind of puffing his chest a little bit, and all of a sudden this confidence has been instilled in him. And it's those type of things for coaching that's really rewarding. And the wins and losses are fun, but honestly, seeing the kids develop over time and see them grow from when they were just scouts to throughout the years, I mean, that's the true reward.
I had a grandpa this last weekend in church come up to me and he said, I just want to say thanks. I said, thanks for what? He goes, thanks for football. I said, okay, tell me about that. And he goes, my grandson, as you know, was struggling in life, and I came and we got him in playing football. He just graduated from college, and I attribute his ability to become part of the team, he wasn't a stud, he wasn't going to play a lot, but he has friends, he has community, he has people around him. He says, and now he's ready for life, and it all started when we got him into football.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common story too. I feel like that happens day in, day out with people that came in and were looking for that kind of that sense of community, like you talked about, and they find it with this game of football. I mean, it is a blast. I would encourage anybody that's on the fence about it to come out and watch some practices and be around the kids and see kind of how the kids interact with one another, and you'll find that throughout the season you forge those relationships and those kind of get etched in stone because of how tough it is to come out there and compete. And like I said, football kind of takes it to a whole different level.
David Nixon, BYU Cougar, NFL player, and now a Ute Conference coach. We couldn't be more proud of all these guys that have come back to give back to our community. David, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. This is a pleasure. It's
we
fun
need to get your
football.
buddy Keel over here.
We'll get him over here. He's busy as well, but we have a fun time. In fact, we're coaching our 7-on-7 team, which we're playing in all the U Conference 7-on-7s. So we're excited to roll that out here pretty soon, starting with the first tournament. So we have a good fun time coaching. Our kids love playing with each other, and it's just a great time. We appreciate everything the U Conference does for us and the organization that it is, because it's pretty impressive what you're able to roll out week in and week out.
Well, thank you very much for being with us. Again, another look from a guy who grew up in Texas football, playing in the U Conference. He could have moved back to Texas. His dad's still probably at Texas A&M.
He's retired, but they were there for a while.
And so, David Nixon, thanks for being with us. This is Jeff Gorange. We're in the trenches, and we're talking youth football. We're out.